second.
Where are we on valuations, Erin, within technology?
So I think valuations they're certainly rich across the board when you look at sort of just the underlying fundamentals of the businesses. But then you have instances like Amazon that continues to innovate. I mean, they just announced their partnership with Realogy. They continue to show strength in terms of moving deeper into the supermarket market. And so you continue to see these companies find new avenues to disrupt. And that's why it's really hard to stay on the sidelines in the services, in the software, in some of these internet names, because they continue to find new ways to break into different markets. And so I think they're going to continue to expand share. I think that the announcement,
despite whatever government scrutiny may come,
it's really hard to handicap what that's going to ultimately result in. Standing here today, this is going to take a long time to work out. Do I want to miss the next year or two of good earnings and, continued expansion into different market segments in order to, because I'm concerned about government intervention, 2 to 3 years out, which ultimately probably is going to result in some stricter guidelines and maybe some settlement, but ultimately is unlikely to completely change the way that these businesses operate. I think you have to stay involved in these names.
Yeah, look at the banks. I mean, the banks had the government as a silent partner, or maybe not so silent, for a number of years, right? Sure. Every time they did something. Yet the bank stock still went up during that period without the real growth in lending or, top line at all. They still went up. So this is a fact of life. So Amazon's dividend policy now may be the government going forward. Facebook's dividend policy may also be the government. They're the only recipients of those dividends. But that's just how it is. It's a fact of life. With that all said, Amazon's paying out $5 billion, and it's not hurting them whatsoever. No layoffs. Matter of fact, they're hiring more. So the growth is enough to subvert those government actions in terms of penalizing.
I think the one difference, though, between the banks and the Amazons or the Facebooks of the world is the fact that, first of all, I don't think you can see as austere in terms of the government regulation, in part because this is where the growth is. This is where the innovation is in the economy. And ultimately, this is what our growth engine is that sort of differentiates us from the rest of the world. I think it would be really hard to impose some of the more austere, government intervention that people are concerned about right now on the tech sector, given that this is what's fueling the underlying economy and really leading to job growth.
But here's the positive side of regulation. They have massive war chests. Other companies, the smaller competitors, don't. So just like with the banks, where it put the smaller banks out of business, force them to merge, the smaller companies won't be able to compete because they'll be under the same regulations, number one. Number two, if they come to Google and say, hey, split it up,
right.
You've got waves coming out. You've got so many businesses coming out, so and the parts will be worth more than the whole.
Right, some of the parts argument. In terms of the differences between the argument, though, I would side with Erin a little bit on this, because you're not paying the valuations that you paid for banks for growth, because you're paying for the growth that may ultimately be handicapped by government regulation. So how do you separate those two? Because for the banks, you weren't paying 26 times forward earnings, for instance, which is what Google or Alphabet roughly is trading at right now.
It's too early. I mean, if you take a look, you could say that this administration is more anti-business than even the Obama administration, but yet you've got a big cellular merger today, right? So what we're talking about is a year, 2 years, and then you've got appeals from that. So you could be 5 years out before anything happens.